Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another WoWFEST lockdown event. My name is Kieran Hodgers and I'm a project manager for Writing on the Wall. And I am really excited for this event with Amru Al-Kadi and Asifa Lahore. Just to let you know that all the events are free for you to watch and you can watch them at the end if you can't catch up now. We are asking for donations, so if you are able to, we are very grateful for donations, and all donations that we receive will be split between fans supporting food banks, South Liverpool domestic abuse services, and Writing on the Wall. We have run a couple of weeks of a full program of events, and we've still got a few more left, so do check out WoWFest a little bit about some of them later. And just I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. Without them, this would not be possible. Arts Council England, Liverpool City Council, the Institute for Creative Enterprise at Edge Hill University, Unison Northwest, and Liverpool John Moores University. Tonight, we have the pleasure of inviting to WOW's company Amru Al-Kadi and Asifa Lahore. Amru's new book, Unicorn, is a really beautiful and necessary account of their experience growing up. Growing up LGBTQI+ is like coming to a fork in the road. No longer can we simply wander aimlessly through the models of life handed to us by our parents, by society, or by our peers. The first crossroad usually signposts us along the road of discovering our sexual orientation or gender identity. But coming out, either publicly or to ourselves privately, carves out choices along all the other paths of identity we are set upon. These intersections are intrinsically linked whether we like it or not. And they talk to each other. Sometimes they shout and scream, but hopefully they make up and find peace in coexistence eventually. In this beautiful memoir, Amru Al-Kadi is faced with many choices. The consequences of each set them on a path of discovering the chemistry and boundaries of their cultural heritage, race, faith, and class. Their LGBTQI+ identity calls these into question, but similarly, they reflect back on the burgeoning recognitions that they may not fit into the heteronormative identities around them. This book testifies to the fact that all parts of ourselves are in constant conversation. This book is one version of that conversation, an innately perceptive, kind, and honest story of a journey to home to oneself, of following the question through to a hard-won answer. I found it at the same time surprising and familiar, warm and harsh, immersive and jarring. And to chair this conversation, I am delighted to welcome Asifa Lahore to WoWFest. Britain's first out Muslim drag queen. I first encountered Asifa's work when she did Channel 4's groundbreaking documentary Muslim Drag Queens in 2015. A few years later, I was lucky enough to be published alongside Asifa in an anthology called The Alphabet Club. Receiving Attitudes magazine's Pride Award, Asifa is an impassioned activist on intersectionality, race, gender, and religion. She has spoken at the Lost Lectures, Channel 4 Diversity Festival, the British Library, and the Women of the World Festival. So without any further ado, please give a very warm Liverpool WOW welcome to Asifa Lahore.
Hello there, everyone. An absolute pleasure to be here with you this evening. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's great to be here this evening, and I cannot wait to get this chat underway. I'd like to, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage, as it were, Amru Al-Kadi.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So before Asifa and I have a conversation about all the themes and topics of the books and that kind of thing, I was just going to read a passage from the paperback. It's actually now called Life as a Unicorn, and it's coming out in July. So I'm going to read a bit from the introduction, which I think gets across the intersectionality that I feel has sort of just underpinned my whole life, and which is really, this whole book is about intersectionality and how complicated an experience intersectionality is. So I would like to read this bit from the book, and then Asifa and I, the wonderful Asifa and I, will have a conversation. And if you hear barking, that's my puppy, FYI, everybody. For the 24th night that August, I found myself cross-legged on the floor of a damp, pungent dressing room. As the rumblings of an Edinburgh crowd reverberated from the venue next door, I say venue, it was more like a cave, I used my little finger to apply gold pigment to my emerald-painted lips. Denon, the drag troupe that I set up 7 years earlier, had survived the grueling Fringe Festival, and we were one show away from crossing our scratched heels over the finish line. A month of performances, often 2 a day, had taken its toll. My skin was at war with the industrial quantity of makeup it was being suffocated in, a 2-hour procedure each time. I had obliterated my left kneecap because of a wannabe rock star jump and slam onto the ground move I felt impelled to perform each show. And a boy I was seeing had suddenly disappeared on me. I secretly hoped that death instead of rejection would be the explanation, but it turned out he was a ghost of a different sort. He had indeed stopped fancying me. Despite feeling so weathered, I was itching to get on stage again. I always feel empowered when I'm in drag and entertaining a crowd. It's my sanctuary, a space where I invite the audience into my own reality, where I don't need to adhere to the rules of anybody else's. No matter how low I'm feeling, the transformative power of makeup and costume is galvanizing. For most of my life, I felt like a failure by male standards, and drag allows me to convert my exterior into an image of defiant femininity. This particular show was always exhilarating to perform because it was the first time I honestly articulated my tumultuous relationship with Islam on stage, trying to mine humor in the unexpected parallels between being queer and Muslim. How I haven't been hit with a fatwa yet, I do not know. A student volunteer usher told us we were moments away from the start of the show, and I did my pre-show ritual where I box with the air and shout, "It's glam room, motherfuckers." It comforts me to imagine my haters as the punch bag motherfuckers. Then I formed a circle with my other queens, our hands all joined at the center in a moment of communion. The synth chords burst through the speakers, and the audience whooped as we strutted through a blackout onto the stage, our backs facing the crowd, pretending that the actual sight of our faces would be some sort of reward. A suspended beat, then lights pummeled the stage. I thrust my arms above me as if it were Wembley. I won't lie, it usually is in my mind. And eyed the dripping condensation coating the cave ceiling, one drop a moment away from plopping on my face. After a prolonged and hyperbolic musical introduction, allow a queen her 15 minutes, the show began with each of us turning to face the crowd one by one until I pivoted around last. The next part was supposed to be me proclaiming, "I am Islam," followed by the Muslim call to prayer remixed with Lady Gaga's Bad Romance. Allah, the same. But on this final night, as I opened my mouth to start the show, I felt a little bit of sick at the back of my throat, and I found I couldn't make a sound. 6 Muslim women, the majority wearing hijabs, were sitting in the front row. There, looking directly up at me, were multiple avatars of my disapproving mother, about to remind me how shameful I was. The ensuing performance was about as fun as your parents walking in on you having sex and then staying to watch until you come. For a section in the show, I sang a parodic Why do you hate me type number to my ex-boyfriend, but the boyfriend I was singing to was Allah. Throughout the routine, the women in front of me were using Allah's name in a more God-fearing way. Allah have mercy, Ya Rab, in Arabic seemed to be the most common refrain. Another highlight included a sketch in which I compare men praying in mosques to gay chemsex orgies. When I dared glance out in front of me, the mother of the group seemed to be repenting in prayer on my behalf. I started to ricochet around a mental labyrinth of paranoia, the censorious voices from my childhood chattering loudly in my mind. As my past enveloped me, the empowering armor of my drag began to dissolve rapidly. I stumbled over my lines, tripped on my heels more than once, and even welled up on stage, which caused the eyelash glue to incinerate my cornea. The rest of the drag queens, as well as the audience, were white, so it felt as if the Muslim woman and I were operating on a different plane of reality from everyone else, one where only we knew the laws. Once the show finished, I sprinted backstage and threw up in a bin. My agent knew something was up and ran to the dressing room. I trembled as she hugged me, distressed at the offense I knew I'd caused. I felt like I was 14 again, when my parents would tell me on a daily basis that my flamboyance was the root of their unhappiness. I'd worked so hard to create my drag utopia, and until that night, it had been my haven. And then came the news I was dreading. The woman, waiting outside the stage door, passed on a message to the usher. They wanted to see me. Like a reincarnation of my teen self, I shuffled off outside with all the strength of a young seahorse adrift an ocean current. 7 years after drag had liberated me, I was about to relearn that my liberated new identity required disciplinary action. And there they were, all lined up. The mother of the group, who was dressed head to toe in Islamic robes, stared down at the floor, refusing even to look at me. Great, I thought. She thinks I'm Satan. She whispered something in Arabic to her daughter that I couldn't make out. As her daughter began speaking, I twitched with terror, like a defendant in court about to learn the jury's verdict. My mum's super Muslim, yeah, so she's a bit uneasy, but she wanted me to tell you that she thought you were amazing and that you should be really proud. Not guilty. In my dumbfounded jubilation, I went to hug her mother, who quickly shifted, like a pigeon does when you suddenly kick the pavement. Easy, my mum's from Saudi Arabia and really Muslim, so she can't hug you, but she thought it was so cool seeing a gay Muslim on stage like that. She said she feels really proud to have been here. I explained how I believed they were cursing me throughout the show. It turns out their expressions were akin to a colloquial, "Oh my God," uttered out of enjoyment. The young woman then held my hand, stared honestly into my eyes and said, "But your song to Allah, fuck, guilty on some counts." It broke my heart. I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. I'm a woman living in Saudi Arabia. But the thing is, Glamru, Allah loves you. That's just a bit from the introduction.
Hi, Emery. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yeah, and you look and sound gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. You look very handsome yourself.
Oh, well, I don't usually look this bearded because I'm always in drag, but I'm just obviously a bit like shipwrecked at the moment because of lockdown.
Well, talking about your drag, and while you were reading that chapter, I was actually once again moved, and I actually wanted to start by asking you about your beginnings in terms of your drag. So you set up Denim. Was that around the same time that you started drag? And what caused you to set up Denim? And tell me more about the group and how they perform.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I went to university, I was 19, and that was like the first time that I was fully out of sort of my parental gaze and kind of any kind of institutional gaze, teachers and stuff. It was the first time I was free. So I immediately had always wanted to do drag. Was always dressing up in my mum's clothes when she didn't know, and also in school plays would always play the leading lady, but it was all kind of allowed in that way. But when I went to university, and I was sort of free for the first time. I literally just did a Facebook post being like, I really want to do drag. Does anyone want to kind of join, and who will come watch? And so I rented out some kind of, it was like an underground crypt basically of one of the colleges at Cambridge. And I was just, did the most budget makeup, like literally I looked so horrendous, and just sang a crap song really badly in front of an audience and shared the stage with loads of drag queens. And it was shoddy, but it was I think that was just like, I knew I wanted to do it so badly, and it was like, this is me, I've arrived. But I think for me, early on, and I don't know if it was the same for you, Asifa, but early on, my drag was quite anti-Arab, not in a way that was active. I don't think I was doing that actively, but I had such a complicated time growing up with my family and also with my faith, and home was, very abusive and a lot of crazy stuff. So by the time that I was at university, I was just like, oh my God, I'm free from all that. And so I think my drag troupe was all white, but my university was all white, really. There were so few people of color, and I never even thought about it. I never even really thought about the race dynamics, or ever thought, because I just thought I've escaped my heritage, which was homophobic, and now I can dress like Lady Gaga and Mariah Carey and essentially dress like a white female pop star. And so my early drag was quote unquote quite basic. It was fun. I felt really free. I went clubbing, I performed little numbers here, but it was a bit like dishonest, because I wasn't really engaging with my heritage or engaging with anything about me. It was just more like, I'm a fabulous, iconic bitch, and anyone who gets in my way is over. Because it was the first time I felt power as well. I was so bullied at school and was so, made fun of. So suddenly I was like, yay, I'm that bitch. So it was a bit basic, but I think a lot of drag queens I speak to say that early drag is it's not very well thought out.
I mean, I totally hear you with that. I mean, my early drag was very much like, if I look back at like my first music video or the first time I ever performed, like, God, I think I looked super busted. But I think there's a fearlessness there when you first do drag, especially coming from our backgrounds, because, if we take on the notion that drag is very much against the status quo, our status quo was very much, this homophobic, transphobic, religious environment where we just couldn't be ourselves. And I totally hear you with what you're saying. And it brings me on to sort of my next question, which is, the chapter opens with you performing at the Edinburgh Fringe. And afterwards, a Saudi Arab woman comes to you, and lo and behold, here you are, gearing yourself up, putting up your barriers because you're thinking you're going to get abused here. And here she is, literally embracing you for who you are. I guess my question is, what do you think she saw in you that reflected her? Because obviously, if she's appreciating you and your art, she's seeing something of her in you. So what is it that connected a Saudi Arab woman, I presume, in a burqa? I'm not sure.
She was, yeah.
So she was in a niqab.
She wasn't. Her mum was in a niqab, but she was in a burqa.
Right. Okay. So what do you think it was that these women saw in you that they saw in themselves?
I mean, it's a really, really good question, actually. I think she was the only one I really had a conversation with, but I think there was a few things going on. I think, and this is where I kind of think about just my privilege in terms of being able to be in the UK freely. It's very strict for women in Saudi Arabia, so like, so I think on one level, for her, it was extraordinary to see someone, brought up Muslim being this transgressive on stage, and for there to be no consequences legally, or, I think that was when I saw, her looking. I think that's why they were like, oh my God, what the hell is, we did not expect this, you know, like, you know, I think for them it was like, genuinely, you know, she says, you know, gosh, and you know, you said things, she said to me, you know, you said things that I really understood, you know, because she was like, she said to me, I also have those conversations with Allah. She said that, she was like, she says, I get angry at Allah all the time for, you know, I believe in him and I think he loves me and all that, but you know, some of the shit that happens in Saudi and all that stuff, you know. So I think she has those conversations of reckon, you know, because the show, and it was a show I was supposed to be doing this year at Edinburgh, and it was Soho Theatre, but obviously with a pandemic, everything's been put on pause. But you know, my show is about me and Allah having like a rom-com almost, me versus Allah. Why are you all over me now? Why are you ghosting me? Like, it's like, you know, and I think for her, she was like, you articulated that conversation with Allah that I've been having in my head, but she's never allowed to have out loud. But I also think for her, she saw the real struggle in it, because I actually passed out basically afterwards. That was the next bit of and you know, I couldn't, once she left, I was like, you can ask all my denim queens. I didn't know what to do with me. I was like almost like in a K-hole. It was like, what
sure.
So I think for her, she was like, I think it was interesting for her because like it was a white room because it's Edinburgh and it's the UK comedy scene. So it was white. And she saw me sort of, I think, putting my trauma on the line for laughs, which I'm good at doing, especially within white spaces. It's like, okay, I know how to make this. If it's like more of a POC audience, whatever, I can kind of get more recognition from the crowd. Whereas like when it's like majority white, like it was in Edinburgh, it's a bit more like, you know, I have to just think a little bit more about my safety and making sure they're laughing and all that crap, and
making sure they understand,
and then I'm not using my shorthand as I would. And I think she saw that actually. I think she was a bit like, fuck all that actually, and like, I'm here and Allah loves you and you don't need the approval of you know, it was also a very successful year for me personally. It was a sold out show, but I wasn't happy. And I think it was a bit like, who am I doing this for? And I honestly think she was like some kind of prophet, let me tell you. Like she was just like, and then she sort of floated away and that's it. It's like, sometimes I think like, was that a mirage?
Who knows? I mean, I was going to say maybe to people that are listening to this or that are going to watch this, that may sound a bit melodramatic, like you just sort of like lying down, fainting as it were. But that's a lot. I mean, I totally get why that happened, because here was a woman, you know, from your cultural religious background, essentially, that was really accepting of you. And to an everyday person, they may not quite understand the nuances of why that has such a massive effect on people like us. So what I'd like to ask you is, what are your personal challenges and obstacles in being a Muslim drag queen?
I mean, just to finish, just to touch on your point just now of people maybe not understanding why it was so kind of meteoric in a way. What I found incredibly strange was, sorry, I'm just checking that my puppy's alive. What I found very strange was that throughout the show, I genuinely thought they were hating it. You know, like I in my head, you know, like whenever I went backstage, I was like to the queens, like, oh my God, they're literally, you know, probably because they were filming it, like they're probably gonna put it on some hate group. And so I really, the narrative that I was used to from my childhood of you're in the wrong, you know, you are the problem and you're going to go to hell. It was like playing out in front of me. So I think part of the reason that I had such an intense emotional reaction was that it made me realize that my childhood had actually distorted my perception of reality. In that I was like, oh, what? Like when she said she loved me, Allah loves it. I was like, I thought you were here to do something really like. So it was almost like is my whole life, have I been seeing things wrong? Because I do, like, if someone's coming on to me, I'm like, genuinely like, whoa, someone's coming up to me to hit me.
Sure,
Genuinely,
sure.
this has happened to me so many times. Or someone will be like, ooh, that guy, that white guy there is checking you out. I'm like, no, he's, he's thinking something racist or whatever, just because of like my neural conditioning. So there is that. And also, I'd never had family at a show ever.
Sure.
And all my white queens, their family are there front row like every single night, being like, we're so proud of her and all that stuff, and it's great. But I'd never had Arabs or Muslims really in the audience.
Sure.
So all of a sudden it was like, you're the actual ones that I care about. I never cared that much what the audience think. I knew what to do, but this is the first time that I cared. Like, so that it was a lot at once. But what were your question? The struggles of being a Muslim drag queen. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot.
And to be honest, I mean, when I asked that, I actually just realized that is actually a double-laced question, because on one hand, you're performing to, non-Muslim white audiences. And then I'm also thinking of the Muslim audiences that may know of you or will come to know of you. So could you talk a bit about the obstacles you face as a Muslim drag queen?
I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I mean, like, there's hate and love coming from all sides, basically. You sort of just live on this sort of it's like I always describe it to someone like it's just a very chaotic identity to have, because it doesn't quite work in harmony. Parts of it does, but when you try, there's all these contradictions coming your way. I mean, for me, like, I do have some angry Muslims who know me online. Like, I actually went to an event to see an Arabic singer perform, and I actually had to leave the audience just because so many people were like, that's that Iraqi causing all the fuss. And so I'm aware of that, but at the same time, you get the far right who've never cared about gay people or trans people ever before. I mean, they don't. Who are suddenly like, Muslims are terrible for gay people, so all Muslims people get. It's like, you don't, but they come and attack me. So I think what I notice is like there's a few levels of obstacles. Firstly, like, you're constantly having to explain yourself, and I hate that. Like, whenever I'm commissioning, if I'm commissioned to write a TV script or I'm trying to pitch a TV show. I have one that's in development about an Arab drag queen, and most of the comments from the commissioners is like, I have this comedy about an Arab drag queen is really about an Arab drag queen and their mum. And the mum, who's also really homophobic, is also more of a drag queen than the drag queen, because she's so absurd. And it's this
which
kind
we're
of
going to come on to.
Yeah, which is this kind of love story. But I've had comments from commissioners being like, oh, I thought she would be more abusive, or that there would be more violence, or can we get a bit more of that? So you kind of hear people's preconceptions of what a Muslim drag queen should be happen before they actually listen to you or hear you out. And there's millions of different experiences. So for me, it's like you're battling with people's expectations all the time when you're trying to get your work seen. And you're also, like, in Muslim spaces, a lot of the time they're like, we hate you for being gay. And then in a lot of gay spaces, they're like, oh God, Muslims, really? Oh God, that could be terrifying. And people, there's not enough narratives really culturally for it to be there. So I guess it's complicated, and it gives me a headache. I'm quite tired a lot of the time, I have to say. Like, I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just
God, I
exhausted.
have like really bad mental health days sometimes. There's lots of ups and downs and exhaustion. So yeah, I mean, how does that affect you as well?
I mean, the book is really about this, but I have terrible mental health, OCD, paranoia, anxiety, depression, all of it. I think a lot of that comes from not feeling like there's one space that I can go to and feel complete. It's really funny. Whenever I've done like therapy or hypnosis, they're always like, close your eyes and imagine the place that you feel happiest in. And I'm like, I don't know where that is. I literally always say that. And they're like, what about a family home? I'm like, no. They're like, what about a place that you holiday? Are you kidding? Like, no. So there's not, and I feel like a lot of people, especially white queers, not all of them, but they always say to me, like, I do have one place where I feel good, the gay club or this or that, or family.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, and I think that is the worst bit to my mental health, the fact that like it's quite fragmenting and there's no singular place where you can feel whole.
Okay, wow. I've just looked at the time and I've realized, God, where time is flying by. I want to ask you one last question, actually, before we go on to Q&A. You know, for me, your memoirs is very much at the heart of it. For me, I was so moved because what I got from it is a child's relationship with their mother. And you know, as drag artists, a lot of us have drag families or have drag mothers, but you describe your mother as your drag mother. Yeah. Could you talk to me a bit about that and about, you know, how your relationship with your mum has evolved over the years?
I mean, yeah, I mean, the narrative of the book really, I think it is a love story between me and my mum. It's extraordinarily complicated. And she's, I guess, sort of responsible for a lot of the trauma that I've experienced in my life. But she's also this really wonderful woman who's like a woman who grew up and married very young in a Muslim country and didn't have much freedom or choice. And as a result, she sees my freedoms and my liberal views or whatever as like almost she's angry that I'm doing something she wasn't allowed to do. And the more that I understood my mum as someone who suffered under patriarchal Islam, the more I realized that even though she can be cruel to me, we both have similar struggles, you know? In a way that like trans women and cis women both suffer from, you know, misogyny or sexism, and like, so that you get mad at cis women for maybe being transphobic because you're just like, oh, we're part of the same struggle. That's how I see the frustration with my mum. I'm like, oh, come on, mum, like we're both being vilified. But she's incredibly funny, glamorous. She looks iconic. She literally like, she once got a welder to fix her dress, which is so drag. And we were incredibly close until sort of my identity became so contentious in the community. So definitely I see my drag as like holding on to an image of her that I had as a kid. It's like, it's my queer interpretation of my, it's like I see Glamru as my mum who never got to fully be free. Yeah.
I mean, I'm super touched and I'd love for you to meet my mum soon when this is
you close?
Done and dusted. She's glamorous in a totally different way, in a very Bollywood manner, but I'd love for you to meet her.
Yeah, I'd love to meet her. That would be lovely. I'm just seeing all these questions, Asifa.
Yes, so shall we dive into them? Just so the audience is aware, I'm actually visually impaired. So I'm going to get Amru, I'm going to get you to read them and also answer them as well.
Well, thanks for such great questions, Asifa. I really enjoyed them. Okay, so the first question was, why the title change for the book from hardback to paperback, and what are you writing on at the moment? Okay, so the reason is really boring, but basically when people were searching for unicorn, all the search engines kept sending them children's coloring books and like unicorn toys. So it got lost in the metadata. So, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I think a lot of people in stores, when they saw Muslim drag queen, were like, oh, can I read this? Am I allowed to read this? You know, and that's what booksellers are telling us. So we thought, well, maybe let's give it a more open title so that people who don't, maybe they're like, oh, well, I'm not a Muslim drag queen, so what am I going to read? Can read it and see themselves. Are you working on any new writings at the moment? I mostly work in TV writing. So I just finished an episode for a TV show called Little America, which is free at the moment, actually, on Apple. There's a free link to that, which I'll give to the moderator so that you can watch the episode free. It's about gay Muslims coming to America. It's the final episode. I am currently writing a sort of, I can't really say too much. I mean, I've just written an episode for a TV show called The Watch, which is based on Terry Pratchett's Discworld books, which is coming out on BBC America. And I have a few shows in development. One I'm very, very excited, which is high camp high camp Arab melodrama, but I can't really say too much about it at the moment. But TV is a space that I'm really interested in, just because I feel like it's such a democratic medium and it can just go to so many people. How do you begin when writing your memoir? What is the starting point to write your own story? And what was your hope for a reader to take away from reading the book? How do you begin when writing your memoir? In a way, I didn't really see it as like an autobiography or a like, I need to start at the beginning or the end. I was just very much like, I actually approached it with like, I really want to explain to people what intersectional identity really feels like, because it's such a buzzword at the moment, and people think, oh, it's this wonderful fluid thing where you're queer and Muslim and whoopee, but I was feeling like that's not the experience of it. The experience for me is the chaos. So I want to write my experience to relay that. And, you know, I didn't think like I need to get this in and this in and this in. You know, I very much approached it almost like as a series of anecdotes that would help build that picture, which is, and I always wanted the book to kind of constantly contradict itself and show the contradictions inherent in having an identity like ours. You know, how you sometimes aspire to whiteness and then you hate whiteness and then blah blah blah, you know, and it's just like that's for me. My main thing I wanted people to take away is because I had done a lot of journalism for The Independent and quite a few other places, and I was always the resident columnist for race issues or you know, and so you get 600 words to basically be like, this is racist and I hate that, and all you're ever feeling is like you're someone who shouts about racism or you're always on the defensive. And I was like, this is really boring, because like it looks like the only thing I know how to say is be like, I'm a victim and I hate racism. Whereas like my life is very, I mean, I love comedy and I make fun of my life, and even the most traumatic things in my life, I never play the victim, I don't think. I just like to be like, lol, look what happened. So when I wrote the book, I was like, I don't want to enter any argument about trans identity or race or use this as a kind of, let me validate my identity. I was like, I just want to write about my experience in a humorous way. And if you can empathize with it, then we have something in common. You know, because that's kind of what it was for me. I didn't want it to be a victimhood thing. I wanted it to just be like, this is the stuff that's happened to me. Some of it's horrible, some of it's hilarious. Read what you, and if you see yourself in it, whether you're cis, white, whatever, I don't care, then then hopefully that empathy will allow you to be a bit less transphobic one day. I don't know. Not, you know, I know there are a lot of trans people who do read it, but like, that's what I've had a lot of comments from people being like, I never thought I could laugh as much at something that had nothing to do with me. And that's why I really think comedy is so political. It'd be interesting for you to talk about your TV writing experience. Any tips for newbies? Yeah, okay, so the main tip would be to write a spec script. So that's basically, if you could imagine like the TV show that you would be desperate to make, your dream TV show that's not been out there, that's all about you or whatever, make it short, like a 25-minute episode, half-an-hour episode, and you write the pilot. For a script that doesn't, you know, it's not for a show that exists. So you can be wild with it, but you just make sure it's authentically you. You don't need to worry too much about it being that plot heavy or whatever, just as much as it's just like a reflection of your voice or your comedy or your story. Get that into a really good place, you know, maybe do a read through with some friends, get some critiques, get it to as good a place as possible, then send that out to agents. And if someone likes it, they will then take that spec script on board and they will send that out to producers and that kind of stuff. And that's how you get writing work. And then from that, that's how I got Hollyoaks, which was my first TV job. And then from there, it kind of went up. But yeah, just write the script of your dreams, and then go from there. And that's really how they ended. You know, it's in a nice way that you don't actually need to have any credits, the TV industry, as long as you've got a good spec script. Maybe a bit controversial to ask, but what do you both think of the monetization of drag culture, e.g. fans that say shade or a literal shade button? And maybe a further question, what do you think of RuPaul's Drag Race?
I think Amri, you probably have quite a lot to say about RuPaul's Drag Race.
I mean, look, I actually think obviously contingent on the fact that it's done a lot of great things and it's really amplified voices and given a lot of careers to drag queens. What I find really weird about it is that and I have a lot of problems with this show. Firstly, like I was speaking to some American queens that I'm friends with out there who are like, you know, to go on the show, when you go on the show, these queens literally get credit cards and put like get into 60 to 80 grams worth of debt because the whole show, particularly in America, is like the polish of your drag and the quality of your wigs and that kind of stuff. So you get a lot of these queens taking out huge credit and then getting eliminated week 2 or 3 or whatever. And it's like, they're really screwed. I hear this all the time. And I think what a huge issue with the show is that like it is the newer drag. So I don't know, Asifa will probably attest to this as well, but like when I started drag or we were starting drag, we were just looking within ourselves to find what we wanted to do and really learning on the scene and learning through failure and learning through community. Whereas I talk to a lot of queens out there who are like, yeah, I only watched Drag Race and then I started doing makeup in my bedroom and now I went on the show. And you're like, there's really so little engagement with the community, and also it's all about like getting great makeup skills, which are important, but in the UK we don't give as much of a shit. Like you can be bussed and just go out there, and if you're just speaking your truth. So I think it's now at the stage
I was going to agree with that.
Yeah, it's cannibalizing itself now, because now the new queens, they just think what would be good on Drag Race rather than like what would be good for the community. What do you think, Asifa?
I think there's a definite rise of a newer generation of drag, especially like the Instagram generation, as it were. You know, doing it for the likes, doing it in order to get onto, you know, to Drag Race, as it were. I started life in the cabaret world, so you know, all the comedy, all the parodies, all the songs, they were hit and miss. I had to learn all about drag makeup. I had to, you know, learn what works, what doesn't work, what South Asian joke would work in a white setting, what white joke would work in an Indian setting, etc., etc. And, you know, I've come to the conclusion that, look, all drag is definitely valid. And I definitely prefer the UK version of the show more than I do the American version, just because it feels a bit more grittier and a bit more real. You know, I really identify, I mean, I'm sure you do as well. We all know a lot of the queens that are on the show: Bag of Chips, Crystal, Davina, Vivian. You know, I'm well aware of them. I've seen them in person. So there definitely seems to be more of an association there. It would be great to see just more representation in the years going forward. I mean, you know, with the Middle Eastern and the South Asian communities being some of the biggest, you know, ethnic minorities in the UK, it would be great to see more diversity on the show, and just more, you know, I'd love there to be a point where AFAB queens, transgender queens, drag kings are represented on the show somehow, because it is very, at the moment, I do feel it's very one boot fits everyone.
Yeah, and also what I don't like is that like it's changed the public's perception of what's good drag. Like I always think, I mean, I've been asked, you know, to go on the show and to audition or whatever, and it's like I would want to be hopefully doing something really political about Islam and drag, and like the challenges aren't set up for that. Like it's like pull a look, maybe do a snatch game, and like celebrity impersonation is really funny. I mean, I would love to do Anna Wintour, but like that's not, I don't think, is it that makes you a great drag. Like for me, I'm always interested in like, what are you doing for the community? What are you saying? What is the critique you're doing? And that kind of stuff. And I would worry that like that form of drag gets swallowed up on the show. And certainly I've noticed with people coming to my show being like, oh, I didn't know you sang live. I thought it was all lip syncing. So you kind of get the impression that like people think drag is one way. And
yes, exactly. Which is, you know, when it did come to the UK, there was this notion of, is it just going to be a copy and paste job? But I do think they've got certain, they've definitely got a British sense in it now. But I just hope it's just much more diverse as it goes along.
Very white and male. And I think actually like as a non-binary like Arab, I think I would feel really stressed on that show. Like I think my mental health would be destroyed. just like me trying to like live up to those images of drag.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever do decide to go on the show, all I'll say is just be yourself, honey. You are brilliant as you are.
Oh, thank you, my love. So are you. What is the future of drag, and how can drag be used to represent more stories from people of color? Are there any barriers for people of color getting into drag? I do think this is a generalization, but I do think people of color, and this is what really annoys me sometimes, like, oh, when some white queens will be like, oh my God, you're not out to your parents? Or like, I've been doing makeup since I was 14 and my mum bought it for me. And you're like, are you like, for me to do makeup at 14 would literally me be like, running out the house and hiding behind it, like, so I think some queens don't actually understand the really literal logistical barriers that are in there for people of color. I was speaking to an Arab sort of femme person the other day, and they were like, yeah, before Black Pride, I had to leave home and in a kind of boy's outfit and then go to McDonald's and put on the outfit I wanted to wear and do my makeup. And like, imagine being a gigging queen and having to think like that, and I think those things happen more with POC families. Not saying POC families are more intolerant, but it tends to be in the UK in terms of cultural backgrounds. And I don't know if you agree with that, Asifa.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, first of all, if you want to do drag and you're from a POC background, I think a lot of it is, first of all, overcoming your own personal obstacles first. Like, is it right to cross dress, or is it right to perform in a dress and in full makeup? I think letting go of personal shame, which you write about a lot in the book as well, is there is a shame attached to being both your true self and then your alter ego, and then having to in most cases not being out to your family, having to practice drag or learn the art form of drag on your own with no support, and sometimes in the shadows, not only is like such a big deal for your mental health, but it takes us much longer to finesse
to
our
climb.
craft. Yeah,
I think so too, and I really think so too. Like, and if you want to go back to the drag race question, I don't know if it accounts for that. You get like, that's a bust hairline, and you're like, oh my God. So I think there's that. Also, yeah, I'd say like my one advice to kind of aspiring POC queens is definitely cut out the noise from the scene, because it's so white dominated. I mean, literally, I was aspiring to whiteness in my early drag. I was just wanting to be seen as good as them. And actually, it's only since I've just been doing my own shit that actually I feel really good when I'm on stage, and I don't care what anyone else says. We had, I don't know what time this is supposed to end, but we've got, this is the last question for the audience. Okay, I will do another reading from the book. I was speaking a little bit earlier about my mum getting a welder to fix her dress. So I'm going to just read that passage just to give you an example of what I mean when I say my mum's a drag queen. We hadn't seen each other in a very long time, and we had to go to an Arab wedding. So obviously we all had to be like on show, and I had to look like a straight man, and my mum wanted to look like the most expensive woman. And so they took me shopping to buy like a man's shirt. So this is the passage. The day got off to a terrible start. My parents asked to meet me in a department store. My parents asked to meet me in a department store so they could purchase me a shirt that would disguise all my nonconformism. I loathe wearing plain suits and shirts. They feel like heterosexual prisons, the ties like death penalty nooses. I often feel such an aversion to them that I can develop a rash around my neck. But I had learned to just grin and bear it. So I agreed to wear the straitjacket and dress up as the heterosexual son they all needed me to be. When I went home to shower before the wedding, I applied my tattoo brightening soap to the unicorn tattoo on my chest as I always did. Caressing the unicorn's rump is remarkably soothing, and I can't leave the house without performing this ritual. I got ready for the wedding and left the house, and it was only after meeting my parents that I realized the soap had reacted to the painfully dull blue shirt and caused a bit of a stain. Mama's reaction deserved an Oscar nomination. Amru, what is that? We cannot show our faces with that. I was thinking, it's barely visible, Mother. And anyway, they already think we're all damned because I practice anal and wear heels. Mama collapsed on the couch, breathing deeply. She was wearing a flowing black dress held together by a delicate metal circle framed around the neck. This is the last thing I need today. Of all days, today you do this. Mother, Trump is president. A slightly patchy section on an otherwise spotless shirt won't impair anyone's life. Do you know what I have been through today? Fuck, maybe it's serious, and this dirtied shirt is the final thing that pushed her over the edge. This Valentino dress I'm wearing, it broke this morning. The metal neck fell apart. I had no other designer dresses that everyone hasn't already seen. Okay, this is serious. I was at my wit's end. My parents sometimes like to throw in a British saying to show they belong here too. And I wouldn't have been able to go tonight if I hadn't found a welder to fix the dress for me. I felt a surge of euphoria as she said this. Why are you smiling like that? My mother asked, apparently offended that I didn't empathize with the gravity of what she was saying. Mum, are you telling me that you had to locate a welder to fix you into a designer dress so you could show your face at this wedding? Yes, Amru, it was very stressful. And now you come wearing a shirt that will make you look like an orphan. A welder. Even the most avant-garde and exciting drag queens I know have never done anything as unashamedly drag as incorporating welding into their costume. The only thing I could respond with was, oh, Mama, I love you. I gave her a hug, to which she was half resistant, no doubt fearing that I might render the welder's hard work null and void. That's from Life as a Unicorn, a journey from shame to pride and everything in between. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, sorry, Amru. So thank you so much. That was such a beautiful reading to finish on.
Oh,
and thank you so much, Asifa, for excellent cheering. It's been a real pleasure for us to welcome you both to WoWFEST Lockdown. And hopefully we'll get to see you in the real world. Hopefully our paths will cross again soon. And I hope the rest of lockdown treats you both very, very kindly indeed.
Thank you for having me, and lovely to see you, Asifa.
And you too as well, and stay lovely and handsome as you are.
Oh, stay beautiful, honey. Lots of love, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone who's been watching, for joining us. If you are interested in buying Amru's book, The Life as a Unicorn, the link will be posted in the live stream, so you can click away and order the book there. Just to remind you that donations are welcome if you're in a position to do so. We are very grateful for them, and they will be split between fans supporting food banks, South Liverpool Domestic Abuse Services, and us here at WOW. We'll also be posting monitoring forms. You don't get away from us that easily in the live stream. They're really useful to know who is coming to our events, so please take just a minute to do them. They're really quick and really easy. So the rest of the festival events we've got lined up are really exciting, and hopefully you will be able to join us for them as well. Tomorrow we have Francesca Martinez and Raul Martinez in conversation about what COVID-19 is exposing in the structures of power that we function within. That's at 6 o'clock. And then straight after that on our YouTube channel, we have musician Drill Minister talking about using music as a form of activism, underground music scenes becoming a bit more political in things like #Grind4Corbyn. And then that segues quite nicely into our closing event, which is the man himself, Jeremy Corbyn, doing a call to the arts at 6 o'clock on Sunday, followed by Liverpool's own Levi Tafari, the urban guru of Liverpool. Please do join us for some of those events, and another opportunity for me to thank our sponsors, Arts Council England, Liverpool City Council, the Institute for Creative Enterprise at Edge Hill University, Unison Northwest, and Liverpool John Moores University. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you at the next event. Stay well.